Aloha. So Mars and Venus have been conjunct, right? Kissing with Pluto in the 60th hexagram since March 2nd. So there's many ways that we could read these three archetypes, but I want to focus on relationships between men and women, or relationships between the masculine and the feminine poles. So there's been many predictions for the Aquarian Age, and one of them is that the South Pole and the North Pole of the Earth would shift. You may have heard of this one. Well, the real pole shift is the masculine and the feminine pole shift, and this is happening inside each one of us. So Mars, Venus, and Pluto in the 60th hexagram, this is a shadow of limitation. Pluto is there until 2025, digging up the truth and digging up our own inner truth regarding what is limiting us. What's limiting us? So the 60th hexagram, right, is the shadow of limitation. And it's the gift of justice. So Mars and Venus show us that the focus has been on our relationships. So we have either felt limited by our present relationships or felt limited by the lack of our relationships. You know, I don't have enough support. I don't have this. I don't have that. So Pluto would have us pressured, right, to find our own inner truth about our relationships. So what's our own inner truth? Separate from our conditioning, what we've been taught to believe. That's been passed down through our ancestors, through our children's books, right? All those books that we read as children, through mainstream media, through our movies and our books and our TV shows. All this programming that we've received regarding relationships. So have you been thinking about your relationships since February? Has that been coming up for you? And sometimes, you know, well, I haven't been thinking about relationships, but we transfer this desire for a relationship with a person, we transfer that onto money or a job or a new place to live, right? It's about the mind's need for security. So beginning on March 9th, coming up this week, until March 15th, Mars and Venus move away from Pluto into the 41st hexagram. And if you've been watching my channel, you know that the 41st hexagram is a big deal. It's the start codon. It marks the beginning of all of our human experiences. So this is a very important marker this week, and it's worth our attention and focus. So the 41st hexagram is the very beginning of the mandala. It's all where it starts, and it's in the sign of Aquarius. So in the tarot deck, the 41st hexagram will correlate to the Fool, if you know the tarot. And so to me, this signifies the birth of the new Aquarian Age relationship that's taking place in the collective unconscious of humanity. Remember, neutrino astrology is all about what's going on in the collective unconscious of humanity. So it takes some time, right, for us to see it out in the world often, okay? But what's really like going, what's churning, what's happening in the collective unconscious? Well, this birth of the new age of Aquarius relationship. So remember that all of our institutions are breaking down for the Aquarian Age. And this includes, you know, the institution of marriage, of course, but it includes our way of relating to one another, especially in our primary relationships, or you could call them our romantic relationships, right? Our committed partnerships. Well, this is the new Aquarian Age relationship. And the Aquarian Age is filled with paradox, And this is where you have seemingly opposite things that are true at the same time. Both are true at the same time, but they seem so opposite. Well, the Aquarian relationship is where one soul lives in two bodies, and at the same time, each person is whole unto themselves. Now, if you look at these two from the shadow frequency, of course, it makes no sense whatsoever, right? So one soul living in two bodies from a lower frequency, well, that's called codependency. right? That's one ego living in two bodies. So it seems, which is impossible. That's an oxymoron right there, one ego. There's always many, 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 many egos. So one ego living in two bodies, this means that the other person is there to serve my ego needs and wants. They are simply an object to me, right? They're an object in my play, and they don't exist outside of me and my needs. So codependency is when both parties sacrifice their authentic self, part of their authentic self, for the relationship. Not healthy, right? That has nothing to do with the new age of Aquarius relationship. So we have to remember how sneaky that ego can be and tricking us that it's our soul. And this is why we need to meditate. We need to have a daily spiritual practice so that we can discern, that's not my soul. That's that ego, that tricky little ego coming in. I actually have a good article that I wrote. I'll probably put a link maybe below, the difference between the voice of your soul and the voice of your ego. It was worth a little reread to refresh it. I put it in a chart form. So that's how the mind works, right? Compare and contrast. So here's how that can work, right? Here's an example of how this can work. Well, the ego has us believe that with certain people, special people, because the ego is all about special, and the ego is always like the other person is just an extension of my specialness, right? The ego has us believe with certain people we have met the one. We have met our soul mate. And we only feel a certain way with that person only. We only feel that way with that person, nobody else, right? And it makes us feel good. That's the ego hit, right? It feels really good. We feel good about ourselves, right? We feel good about that other person. We even feel good about life. So what's really going on here, like when that happens? Well, within our personal unconscious, we've met our ideal. Okay, so each one of us has an ideal of the opposite gender. So Carl Jung, if you study Carl Jung, he would call it the anima or the animus, depending on if you're male or female. And then we project this ideal onto that person. And that person will have some of those traits, right, for it to work, right, for that connection to work, but not all, right? Because why? Well, humans are humans. Humans have flaws. So it brings up, when we confront our ideal and then project it onto another person, well, it's bringing up this ancient memory, right? And this is the feeling of being whole and complete. And this feeling is ecstasy. It's rapture, right? These are the higher octaves of our emotions, right? Of our emotional body is ecstasy and rapture, all that good stuff, right? So these are like divine feelings. But the shadow tricks us into believing it's that person out there that's making me feel so good about myself. It's them. I need them. But really, in truth, it's going on inside each one of us. It's all about you. So when we do meet our ideal, which is the archetype of our perfect mate, we all have this perfect idealized archetype within us. Well, there's a spiritual purpose to this, and it's to integrate that ideal within our own self. Okay? So a lot about this time that we're in right now for the Aquarian Age is we're becoming whole, right? We're reclaiming these aspects of ourself back, right? Instead of projecting them on the external. Okay, so the spiritual purpose is to integrate that ideal within our own self, right? So it's an opportunity for an inner alchemy of our masculine and our feminine energies that needs to take place for our spiritual development. So remember that we're growing up, right? We're being spiritual adults. We're becoming spiritual adults during this time that we're in. So this is a necessary part of our growth and our maturity. So it's a part of us. And in truth, it really has nothing really to do with that other person. And what we've been taught, because the spiritual development has been hijacked by our media and external forces, well, we've been taught through our media it's all about that other person. You're falling in love, you're living happily ever after, you're fulfilling, that other person is fulfilling all those needs, right? Without any real conflict, right? So this is the shadow, right? Mars and Venus moving into the 41st hexagram of fantasy, the shadow of fantasy. So it's really taking this deeply spiritual experience in order to individuate, right, into your authentic self and then projecting it onto another person. And what a burden, right? What a burden for that other person to carry that that expectation and pressure to become your ideal, and vice versa. And let's talk about the vice versa part. Well, how do you know that this is happening to you? Okay, I'm going to show you right now, so then you're going to be aware of it the next time you're in interaction with somebody, especially with this energy that's coming up this week. Okay, so how do you know that this is happening to you, that this ideal is being projected onto you? Well, in my experience, my own personal experience, when I'm in the presence of a woman who is projecting her ideal onto me, I can feel it. And what does it feel like? Well, it feels like I'm being pulled away from my authentic self. I'm being pulled away from my authenticity. And it's a very powerful pull. And the pull, it depends on what the woman is projecting, what her ideal is. It could be pulling into an archetype of the white knight, right? Or the protector, or the provider, or the romantic, or the cowboy, right? Or the boy, the child. And if you're not self-aware or you don't know yourself, it feels really good. It feels really, really good to move into these masculine archetypes. But it's not real. It's not authentic. It's a fantasy. Okay? So let's say the male is not secure in his feminine energy. Let's turn the tables here. And he projects his ideal onto the woman. Well, the woman's going to feel the pull, right? What's she going to feel pulled into? I'll just throw some archetypes out here. The angel in the house. If you've studied English literature, right? It comes from a poem in the Victorian Age. And it basically means that the woman is pure. She's the perfect angel. She's flawless, right? Or the damsel in distress that needs to be saved. Or the free spirit that's completely untamable or unavailable, right? Or the sexually free woman, whatever his ideal is that he's projecting, well, the woman's going to feel this pull. So these are powerful archetypes. They're powerful archetypes that are really coming up now, and we're being called to work with them as we enter into this age of Aquarius, and we're being called to integrate them, right? Anyway, that's another video to go into how to use archetypes for your spiritual development. But it's really important that you stay authentic to yourself, right? And feel that pull. And it's like, don't go there. That's not me. This person is projecting their ideal onto me. You see how some people, you can get trapped in relationships. You get trapped in these archetypes because they feel really good. And then reality sets in, right? And then it's like, no, hey, I'm no angel in the house, or hey, I'm not this perfect white knight, and you break out of these archetypes, and then that's all the conflict starts. So when you go through this deeply internal spiritual alchemy, when you don't project, there's no need to project your ideal onto another person, because in truth, you're whole onto yourself. This ideal that's coming up from the unconscious is just calling for you to integrate this. This is you. It has nothing to do with the other person. And when you do that, then you can relate to that person as they truly are. in their own authenticity with warts and all, right? Their own flaws. You can see them in reality. And you don't want them to be anything other than who they truly are, right? Can you imagine the world like that? Yeah, so you can just get a sense of what's coming for the Aquarian age, these new Aquarian relationships. So we've got to let go of our conditioning when it comes to our relationships. And this week is a perfect opportunity to reflect on your relationships or what you want in a relationship, right? And is it the truth for you? Or is it an imposition from the external? Or is it passed down from your ancestors? Right? So one off the top of my head that I can think of right now is living together. Who told us that we had to live together? If you're in a romantic committed relationship, you have to live together. Who said that? Right? Like really dig these things up and find out what's true for you. And then when you enter your next relationship, right, you're going to be so authentic and to know yourself. Do you see how key it is to know your own frequency so you're not pulled into these archetypes and projections by others coming at you? So we want to move out of the shadow of fantasy, right? This 41st hexagram, Mars and Venus in there. And we want to move into the gift of anticipation. So anticipation is to know 100% without a doubt that the divine is in control of who comes and goes from your life. The divine is in control of all that. So all of these pivotal people that are predestined, they're predestined, right, to meet you. No one can control or stop anyone you are predestined to meet. So you can just relax and let that go. You don't have to do anything. It's all predestined. So we don't chase relationships in the Aquarian age. We don't chase relationships, or we don't be chased. So you don't allow yourself to be chased by someone, and you don't chase someone. That's the old way. Authentic relationships or Aquarian relationships simply reveal themselves, right? Your relationships simply reveal themselves. Here I am, right? So this is such an exciting time to be alive. It truly is. So keep your focus on your individual spiritual development right now. That's why you're here. You're evolving spiritually. Don't get distracted by survival, right? That's what's the theme out there is being pumped. Be in fear. Survival, 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 right? It's distraction. So remember the movie The Matrix. Remember the woman in the red dress? Well, there's so many women in the red dress right now. So keep your focus on your own internal spiritual alchemy. And we're each being birthed into our authentic self. So imagine yourself right now without a need, right? I don't need anything from anyone on the external. This isn't the independent ego, right? The independent ego still is like in reaction and still wants something from the external. This is true because you're in your authentic self. You don't need anything from anyone on the external. You don't need anything from the external. There's nothing the external can offer you because you have everything already. You're complete and whole onto yourself. And imagine your partner was the same way as you, both living in the self, the higher self. Well, that's the one soul and two bodies, because we all share this one self. You know, we all share this, the one self. When you're in your own self, higher self, you can connect to all other selves, because that's where we all come from. So that they say in the Aquarian age that enlightenment will be 2 by 2, not 1 by 1. So the future of these new Aquarian relationships are something to really explore. And of course, it's an interest of mine, so I'll be talking more and more about it in future videos. Okay? So authenticity, remember the nodes, the south node, north node. South node, we're letting go of compromise. compromising, and then we're moving into the 8th hexagram, which is all about being our authentic self, being our unique self. So the recorded readings help you to let go of your conditioning, right? What you've taken on that's not you, right? There's a certain things that you need to cultivate your uniqueness, what food you need to eat, the environment you need to be in, how your brain works, what you're supposed to see out in the world, how to make your decisions, all based on your human design chart. So it's still $25 off. So order yours today, over 1.5 hours long. And also my mother and father wound webinars, if you want to go deeper into your own healing around relationships, right? Explore this. A lot of our wounding comes from the mother and their father, earthly mother, earthly father. And you can still get both of those for $99. And that's over 16 hours of content with meditation. The recorded readings actually come with the meditation too. And if you need to do some healing, if you know you need to do some healing and forgiveness work with your earthly mother and father. Okay? So please leave your comments below. And thank you to everyone who's donated or purchased one of my products. I really appreciate it. And be sure to sign up for my free newsletter so we stay connected. And thank you for liking, subscribing, and ringing the bell and sharing. And you can follow me on Telegram, Instagram, Odysee, Facebook, and I'll see you in the next video. Satnam Aloha.